Hello and welcome back to Telltale Books videos. I'm Greg and I'm going to talk about another story by J.G. Ballard in this video, this time Chronopolis. Chronopolis is, on my list, the 12th story by Ballard. We're well into 1960 now. This was published in June of 1960. Originally in New Worlds, issue number 95 for June of 1960, and it is a novelette length, not short story, but it's not a novel. It is a novelette, so around, 30, 40 pages. And, well, of course, you can get this in the free PDF of issue number 95 for June of 1960 of New Worlds magazine. You can track down a physical copy of issue number 95 of New Worlds. It also was published as part of the collection, of course, Chronopolis and Other Stories by J.G. Ballard, which was published in 1970, I think. 71, and I happen to have a copy of that. It's where I first read Chronopolis many years ago, back in the early 1980s, and I got it as a used copy with no book jacket, and it's a book club edition, so it's not worth much. But I do have a copy of Chronopolis and Other Stories, and I did read everything in that volume way back in the 1980s. Currently, I also do have it in my favorite, The Complete Short Stories of J.G. Ballard. The stories I'm reading in 1960, these, you'll probably remember me mentioning previous, in the 1950s Ballard stories, that they were really good, but they seemed more traditional science fiction. With the stories I've been reading lately, starting with The Sound Sweep, and then Zone of Terror, and now Chronopolis, these are the stories that, to me, feel like Ballard. It feels like we're really into his mature style, and all the things that we all love about J.G. Ballard's fiction are now showing up. The surreal imagery. In Chronopolis, you've got the city. It's an abandoned city, which right away, that's Ballardian right there. But in the city, in the abandoned section of the city where there's lots of skyscrapers, lots of buildings, every building has a big clock on it. And the clocks are all color-coded differently for different reasons, and some have multiple hands. But there's just clocks everywhere you look. That's where the title of the story comes from, Chronopolis, because it's all about that city where everything was scheduled. Everything was by the clock. And you can see where this is coming from. I mean, our modern world, we do constantly stress about, are we on time? When is something going to be scheduled? There's practical reasons when it comes to getting groups of people together in one place, or where they can communicate at one time, or getting something done by a time which will allow a company, say, to make the best profit off of it. Like, certain movies are really good for releasing in the summer. Other movies they don't want to release until Christmas, because there's different types of audiences that go to movies at those two different times. Books seem to have had different schedules over the years. It seemed it used to be, at least in doing bibliographies, it seems like it used to be a lot of books were released early in the year, in the spring. But more recently, it seems like August, September, October are the big months for new releases by the publishers. I mean, there's books being released all year round, but the really big well-known names: Stephen King, Joyce Carol Oates, Dean Koontz. They're releasing their books August, September, and October because there's some marketing data somewhere that says that's the best time for them to release their books. So we live by all these schedules, and Ballard took that further to a world where everything was scheduled and everything had to be scheduled. And if you didn't make it in your slotted time, too bad, you had to wait until the next time when you were allowed to do that thing. You know, if you didn't get to the store during your allotted scheduled time for going to the store, you had to wait until the next cycle when you are allowed to go there again. And so you can't just go to the store when you want. Everything was that deeply, anally scheduled in Ballard's world here. But the story starts with a guy who, as a kid, there weren't any clocks, or any clocks they did find, the hands were removed and the insides were taken out. And he wanted to know why. So he starts looking into why, and he actually finds a working watch and starts using it, but he gets caught. But he isn't right away thrown in jail by the time police, because there's time police. If you're caught with a working watch, they can throw you in jail. At the very least, they're going to take that watch away. So this is after the fall of Chronopolis that the story has taken place, because things got to where humanity was lost so much by the intense scheduling of Chronopolis that people rebelled and just took Chronopolis down. So this guy is taken. He wants to know why this happened. And so it's a guy who's his teacher. He's actually a member of the time police. He takes the main character to this city, which is never in the story called Chronopolis, but you know, the title of the story kind of tells you that that's what it is, and with all the clocks around. Yeah. But the thing that happens is that this young man being taken to the city and seeing all these clocks, he doesn't understand why they can't at least have some of them running. So he gets away from his teacher and stays in Chronopolis. He finds a guy that's been fixing the clocks and starts helping this guy fix the clock. And he gets the main central clock that all the other clocks used to run off of. He gets that working again. And of course, when the time police catch wind of that, that's when they go and they arrest him and they throw him in prison. And I'm sorry if I'm spoiling the story. You really need to read it, though, because Ballard's writing and the imagination of the story and the descriptions are way beyond what my synopsis can possibly bring to it. You'll get a whole lot more out of it, a whole lot more enjoyment out of this. Ballard is a great craftsman at writing, and it's just, you got to read his stuff. You can't just rely on my little synopsis. But I need to get into these details and in order to try to make it clear why I think this is truly one of the greatest science fiction stories ever, and definitely one of the best so far by Ballard. And it's a top tale for sure. And here again, I don't think, just like Your Haploid Heart, which I just reviewed, here's my next story, and I didn't plan it this way. It just kind of fell together this way, that these two stories were together, and they're two of the most incredible stories I've read. And both stories that I read when I was young, but I'm rereading them and I'm seeing so much more in them now. And I love it. It's just so cool. If you're somebody who only likes science fiction that is along the lines of Star Wars, going into space, getting into space battles, fighting the evil aliens. If that's all you want from your science fiction, Ballard isn't for you. Ballard is literate. He is intelligent. He is writing science fiction. He was proud to be called a science fiction writer, even though much of his work was so far above anything else that was being done at the time. Ballard has a way of taking these surreal situations, of developing these surreal situations out of observing our current society and reapplying things he sees in our current society, but in a kind of an absurd way, and creating this near future that is very surreal and disturbing and just brilliant. And he does this without a lot of the standard science fiction things of space flight and aliens and robots. You don't find all that here. You don't even find a lot of the things that Philip Dick relied upon. You don't find that in Ballard. He felt you don't need all that. That science fiction should be really about the world around us. We're living in a science fiction world. The things I'm doing right now, you could not do in Ballard's in 1960 when Ballard wrote this story. You couldn't do this stuff. This didn't exist. This was science fiction back then. You can do it today. It's a reality. And that's what Ballard felt was the best kind of science fiction. And that's what he's doing here is he's creating this world that's almost a total fantasy world, almost a fairy tale world. It's so surreal and so absurdist. And yet it's based upon our real life situations. He just takes it a little farther. And he loved to do that in his fiction. He loved to do that as a way of pointing out the dumb things about our modern world. But I also was left in this story, the fact that he had people rebel against the timekeepers in the city and bring it down because this ridiculous adherence to schedules was dehumanizing everything. You first of all think, okay, that's what Ballard's trying to say, is that human beings are not this mechanical. We shouldn't be organizing everything to the nth degree. We should be allowing a certain degree of messiness to the world around us, because that's really how we are. We are not so neat and perfect and orderly or always logical. We are kind of messy. And we need a world that allows us to be a little bit that. So this highly organized world stripped people of their humanity. And you would think that is Ballard's message. But then he has his main character rebel against the world that he's in and try to get the clocks running once again. He's a hero, he's an anti-hero. And the story goes on to him trying to get clocks working again, not understanding why we can't use them. Why is it so terrible to have a watch? And for that, he ends up in prison. But he's our point of view character. He's who we're kind of empathizing with, but he winds up in prison. So you had this story which took scheduling and organization to a ridiculous degree, but in fighting against it, the world went too far the other way in never allowing anybody to be at all organized. And kind of like the Heinlein story I reported on not too long ago. Now I can't remember, Coventry, of a guy that's sent to the other half of the United States where he thought he was going to be living in a world of rugged individualism, and he finds out no, it's not like that. And the three political systems that developed in that part of the country, they don't have the level of control of the first half of the United States, but they still have systems that keep you from being who you want to be. And so none of these political systems is really being shown to be the best for us. It's like Heinlein's pointing a finger at all of them and saying they all suck. And Ballard is kind of doing the same thing here, where he's pointing at the two different extremes and saying these both suck. Neither one is good, and yet we want both. We want some of both in our lives. And so you leave the story not really knowing where Ballard stands on the issue. Should we have rigorous scheduling, or should we let a lot of that slide and be a little more by the seat of our pants? I kind of think that's where the answer really lies, that the best society for human beings is one that is a little messy, but does have some organization, but doesn't take either one of those to any extremes. Lot to think about here. In a story with a lot of beautiful imagery and really cool things going on. I can't say enough about Chronopolis. This is Ballard at his best. And if you've read Chronopolis, please leave your comments. I want to hear from you. What did you think about it? What do you think about the things I've said in this video? Do you think I'm full of crap? Do you think I've got some good points? I don't know. You tell me. I want to hear from you. And otherwise, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and keep coming back and watching more of my videos. I'm going to keep going with Ballard. My next Ballard is going to be The Last World of Mr. Goddard. That's one I have not read before, so I'm looking forward to it, especially if it's going to turn out to be as good as this. I've got 3 Ballard stories in my top tales so far. Let's see how many more can make it. I think a lot of them are going to make it because I really love this stuff. Anyway, come on back for more. I'm going to be here doing more videos till I die.